We were still able to make it here this morning. Today, we're going to be talking about young people. And the sermon title is Young People After God's Own Heart. I appreciate the fact that here we are where my wife and I and our kids have been here for about 4 years now. And when we first started coming, it felt kind of like our kids were the only ones that were really here. But steadily we've started to grow, and steadily we've started to add to the number of kids that are coming regularly. And so I thought, this is a very appropriate time to preach a sermon like this, because we have children and young people who are starting to attend more. And this isn't just for the kids. I want to do a show of hands if you are under the age of 18. Everybody look around and look, see those that are under the age of 18. Now, let's say this. Raise your hand if you were once under the age of 18. One last time, raise your hand if you have the ability to influence somebody who is under the age of 18. All of our hands should be raised. Why? Because we all have an opportunity, whether it's small or whether it's big, to influence those around us. Especially think about the children that are looking to you as an example. Even last night, I had to call Brother Paul to be an example for Monica. Why? Because she just didn't like our answer on one of her Bible class homework. And so I called Paul, and guess what? Paul agreed with us. But Paul had the opportunity to be an example, an influence for Monica. And so each one of us, whether it's, it's something small like helping with Bible homework, or whether it's large like raising a child from birth to age 18 and on, we each have an opportunity to influence a young person. And so to start off, I want to look at examples from the Bible of young people. To start off, we see Esther. Now, we think Esther, she gets married, and so she's obviously aged 20 to 30. But really, the age of marriage at that time for a Jewish woman was somewhere around 13 to 15 years old. She was a teenager. She was there, she gets married to King Ahasuerus, and she has this opportunity to help deliver the Jews from Persia. And we have that great verse in Esther that says, maybe you were put in this position for such a time as this. And Mordecai encourages her to go before the king and to speak on her people's behalf. At maybe 15 years old, maybe younger, maybe a little bit older. But to go and speak on the behalf of her people. And what does she say? I will go. If I die, then I die. She's afraid because she's going to go speak to the king, and she's going to speak kind of out of place. And what could the king do? The king could kill her. But she says, I'm going to go. We see Samuel. He's a prophet from a young age. Samuel, he's asleep in the temple, and he hears the voice cry out. And he answers and he says, here I am. And he runs to Eli, who's his guardian, who's the judge at the time. And he says, "Here I am. You called me." And Eli says, "I didn't call you." He does it two more times, and finally Eli realizes, when you hear that voice again, you say, "Speak, Lord." And so Samuel does it. And what God tells Samuel, this prophecy about Eli, and tells him, God tells Samuel, "Go and speak this prophecy to Eli." And what does Samuel do? He speaks it. And if you read it, it's a difficult prophecy to tell. But he does it. Mary raised the Son of God on earth. Again, we think of her, we see depictions of her, and we see her as, maybe she's 30 years old, 35 years old, and she's obviously had her whole life together. Again, the age of a Jewish woman at the time was 13 to 15 years old. She was young. And she's told, "You're going to become pregnant through the Holy Spirit. And you're going to raise this child on earth." See, young people have the ability to even influence the world. Young people have the opportunity. They might be put into positions where they have the ability to change everything that we know. Esther had that opportunity, and Esther took it. Samuel and Mary had that opportunity. And so think about, you're sitting here saying, "Well, I'm not a young person anymore." But like I said, you have that opportunity to help that young person, to encourage them, to support them, to teach them, so that they're able to make that influence to others. They're able to do that and influence others. Here's a story from the Old Testament. 1 Samuel 17, verses 34 through 36, it says, "But David said to Saul, 'Your servant was tending his father's sheep when a lion or bear came and took a lamb from the flock. I went out after him and attacked him and rescued it from his mouth. And when he rose up against me, I seized him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has killed both lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, since he has taunted the armies of the living God.'" David goes and he's bringing supplies to his brother who has gone off to war. David is likely to be 15, 16 years old. We don't know for sure, but we know that the age that men go off to war is 20 years old. And so his brother is off to war. So David is obviously younger than his brother, and obviously has not gone off to war just yet. And so he goes and he is bringing supplies to his brother, and there he finds Goliath. And what is Goliath doing? Goliath is going out and he's mocking the armies of Israel. And nobody is willing to go and fight Goliath. Why? Because he's a giant. He's very tall. He's very strong, powerful man. And nobody is willing to go and fight him. And yet he continues every day to mock the armies of Israel. And so David, when he hears this, he says, "Why is nobody going and fighting? Why is nobody going and standing before this giant of a man and fighting him? And David finally says, fine, I will be the one who goes and fights Goliath. And Saul at first says, no. You're just a kid in your youth. And David said, I fought lions. I fought bears. I can get through this as well. I don't know the last time I've seen anybody really fight a lion or a bear. But I know it happened. And David says, I fought them and I got through it. And I want to look at different ideas, different things that the youth today, they face, so that we can become aware of the lions and the bears that they face and how we can encourage them to defeat those. And also to look at different traits that a young person can have to help them, to strengthen them. Children, youth today, really, they face a lot of trials and temptations. And you might be sitting back and saying, yes, I faced those same things. And yes, you did. You faced those same trials, those same temptations that they did today, that they do today. But the thing is as technology has grown, the access to different temptations has grown as well. And the thing is the world around us celebrates that evil. Isaiah 5, verse 20, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who substitute bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Isaiah says, hey, there's those around you at this time, at the time that Isaiah is preaching, and he's saying that they look at good and they say, man, the good is evil. And they look at evil and they say, that's okay with us. That's good. That's a good thing to do. Turn on the news. In fact, I don't encourage you to turn on the news. Keep the news off. But if you do look at the news, guess what? You're going to see all kinds of evil things that people are celebrating today. And those are the temptations that plague our young people. Temptations to look at pornography online, to call themselves a different gender than they are. Temptations to follow the influence of those that are calling evil good. And the thing is, when a lot of us, when I was younger, we had one computer in the house. Nowadays, there's at least 2 computers in the house, 5 cell phones in the house that all have internet access. First Corinthians 10:13 says, no temptation has overtaken you, but such as is common to man. And God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will provide the way of escape also, so that you will be able to endure it. I was talking to a Christian recently about different temptations, different things that he faced as a youth. He's 63-ish years old. And he said, I guess he's younger than that. I guess he's around 50, 60. But he said that his parents were very strict. And they would make sure that he was kept in kind of kind of a box, a metaphorical box. He wasn't allowed to do very, very much. He wasn't allowed to go places without his parents and all kinds of different strict rules that he had on him. But his parents let him go across the street to the person or the child that lived just next door, just across the street from his house. Those parents were not as strict as his parents. And what happened is, he says that trouble was just right across the street. And when that child started getting into different things, guess who he influenced to get into those same things? Trouble is just across the street. And so, yeah, there needs to be a balance as we're taking care of children. Being overly strict can cause children to want to rebel from us. But being too loose, they get into all kinds of things and they just do whatever they want. And so there needs to be a balance when taking care of children. I like when I'm driving down the road and I see a sign that's put up obviously from a parent that says, "Kids on the loose," or "Caution, children at play." Why do I like that? Because they're letting their kids just go out and to play and get scratches on their knees and get hurt and to learn. But if I let my kids outside, I don't leave them outside all day and unmonitored. If I let them go play with friends, I keep an eye on them. If I let them go play outside, I watch them and make sure, hey, they're not getting into strangers' vans. But the other thing is that I've set up with my children is you can ask me any question that you might have. In Nehemiah is facing attacks from the people that are surrounding Jerusalem. And he sets up a rally point and says, if you hear the trumpet, you come to this rally point. I've set up myself and my wife as the rally point for our children. If they face something, if they're uncomfortable with something, if they have some question, they can come to me and they can ask me. James 1, 2, and 3, consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. For young people, we don't really think about it that way. We go through tough times and we say, man, I don't like going through this. And what does the future hold for that person that goes through difficult times and gets through it? Those difficult times, those trials, those issues that we face, they get easier and easier to deal with. And I'm not saying to go out and to cause your child to go through all kinds of trials at an early age, but think about how can you maybe allow them to experience some safely? How can you let them go and skin their knees? As a kid, guess what? My mom and dad let me ride my bike wherever I wanted to go. I would come home with massive scrapes down my leg because I would fall. I would take a corner too fast and I would slip and I would slide across the streets like what you see one of those old motorcycle riders get into an accident. But what did that help me learn? That pain is temporary. Pain will go away. To be safe. But pain is temporary. One thing that a child needs to know, a young person needs to know, is to give glory to God. If you ever spend any time on like Facebook or what is it? It's on Twitter anymore. It's X or any of those social media apps. You see people that call themselves, quote unquote, guess what? Influencers. Who are they giving glory to? They're giving glory to themselves. They say, look how good I am. Look how well I made my life out to be. David, when he talks about facing the lion and the bear, he says, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and may the Lord be with you. David didn't say, hey, you look at me, look how great I was. I was able to defeat a lion and a bear on my own. But he says, I was able to defeat it by God. God gave me the strength, gave me the ability to beat the lion and the bear. Psalm 115, verse 1, not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to your name give glory, because of your loving kindness, because of your youth, or your truth. The psalmist writes, it's not us. It's not us that has the ability that goes out and does these, that makes these great things happen. But the wisdom, the strength, the ability comes from you, O Lord. When I think of David, I think of in Philippians chapter 4, verse 13, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. I've said this one time before, but when I'm talking to people, I point out the fact that it says I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Not that might or maybe will strengthen me. It says that he does strengthen me. And so when we're facing issues, when David's facing the lion and the bear, he knows God has given him the strength. God has given him the victory over the lion and the bear already. And he's given him the victory over Goliath. And so he's trusting in God. We need to put more of our trust into God. We need to find more of our strength in God. Not on our own abilities like we do so often, but find our wisdom, our strength, our ability to take care of and serve others and do all things through God. For those that are in their youth right now, let no one look down on you. I think it's important for us to remember what Psalm 127 verse 3 says, behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. I think sometimes in life, myself included in this, as parents, we can kind of look at children as maybe a little bit of a burden. Maybe a little bit of, well, I wish I was able, if I didn't have children, I would have been able to travel to Nepal and to climb Mount Everest, or if I didn't have children, I would have more money, I would have a boat by now, I would have a Lexus and all. And so we sometimes, as parents, we view kids as, they're just kind of dragging us down. I'm not saying all the time, but I'm saying sometimes we get into those moods where we look at kids as, okay. But instead we should look at them as they are a gift from God. They are a reward from God. And kids cost a lot of money. We can't travel as easily with kids. This last month, we were all planning on going to Cleveland, and I was looking at it, and I'm like, man, it's going to be such a headache to travel with a newborn and do all this stuff. And so we ended up canceling the trip, and only I went to Cleveland for my mom's funeral. But think about the things that you do get to do with your kids. The places that you do get to take your kids. It doesn't have to be a major vacation or trip. Maybe it's just simply going to the store with your kids and seeing their face light up when you say, hey, yeah, we have that little bit of extra money to give you a sucker at the check stand or a candy bar. Or think about this time of year when what are people doing up in their houses? They're putting lights up on their houses. And it costs next to nothing to drive around with your kids with a bowl of popcorn in the back seat and looking at all the lights that people are putting up on their houses. And those are the memories that you and your children will remember. I've been thinking about my mom a lot lately. And for those that are visiting with us or haven't heard, my mom passed away recently. And there's a lot of great memories that I have with her. A lot of those memories come from playing games at home, spending time, talking with her. Not a lot of them come from these long vacations that we went on or these expensive trips or whatever it was. But think about how you can spend time simply with your children. In Titus 2:6, likewise urge the younger men to be self-controlled. Paul writes to Titus because we all make mistakes, especially when we're younger. And Paul writes to Titus to make sure, hey, everybody, younger men, be self-controlled. Keep a muzzle on or a bit in the horse's mouth. Don't just be running around doing all kinds of crazy things, but stay on course. Stay in the path that God has set for you. 1 Timothy 4:12, one of my all-time favorite verses, let no one look down on your youthfulness, but rather in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity, show yourself as an example of those who believe. This is something that I have thought about for a long time. And as the younger child of two, oftentimes I was looked down on because, oh, he's young. And still today I feel that same way. But the thing is I've realized recently, and is even though I'm younger than my sister, even though I'm younger in a congregation, I still have influence. I still have to conduct myself in such a way that people look at me and say, wow, he's setting such a great example. When my mom got sick, I traveled back to Cleveland, and here's my dad and sister that very reserved, very antisocial, they don't like to talk to people very much. And so when we had to talk to doctors, when we had to talk to nurses, when we had to make phone calls to check on mom in the middle of the night, who was doing that? It was me. I was setting that example for my mom, for my dad, for my sister, of we need to take care of mom. Mom has spent years taking care of us. It's now our turn to take care of mom. And I can do that by calling, by talking to the nurses, by asking questions. So young people, look at your life. Look at the way that you can be an example for people. And take advantage of that. In Matthew chapter 18, 1 through 5, it says this, "In that time the disciples came to Jesus and said, 'Who then is greatest in the kingdom of heaven?' And he called a child to himself and set him before them and said, 'Truly I say to you, unless you are converted and become like children, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever then humbles himself as this child, he is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever receives one such child in my name receives me.'" What is Jesus saying here? We need to be innocent and humble as a child is. Do children get everything right 100% of the time? No. Do I get everything right 100% of the time? Absolutely not. But the thing is a child is innocent and humble and may make mistakes, but they are going to admit it. They say, "I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers." And so what do? They ask questions. And yeah, sometimes it gets a little frustrating. We're driving on the road and we're getting the 30,000th question of the road trip. We've gone from our house to McDonald's. And somehow they're able to ask 30,000 questions. But why? Because they're curious, because they don't have all the answers. And they're innocent. They don't go out looking to sin. And Jesus is telling us that we need to have this childlike faith, this childlike attitude, to rely on God, to admit, hey, I don't have all the answers to everything in the universe, and we don't, and we're never going to have every single answer to every question that can ever be asked. But we rely on God, who does have every answer. And we stay innocent. We act as children. Rely on him as our Father. And so I ask now, as we wrap up for today, if you have not yet been baptized, if you're ready to say, I'm going to rely fully on you, God, as my Father, and I'm going to ask for your help whenever I need it. Or if you have any other spiritual need, please come forward as we stand and sing Come to Jesus, number 103.